gods are purely anthropomorphic. They're seen to control natural forces. But they're men and women up in the infinite ether. And the Olympian gods would often come down and interact with humans.
The Greek pantheon of gods were not gods as we think of them today. They descended from the sky and they interact with humans. So you have to ask the question, are we really talking about bona fide gods in ancient Greece, or was it something else? Is it possible that the pantheon of Greek gods didn't consist of a figment of our ancestors' imagination, but physical beings that actually mingled amongst man back in the day? Is it possible that the gods, who played such a vital role in the lives of the ancient Greeks, truly existed? While it may sound like a fantastical notion, ancient astronaut theorists suggest it is a very real possibility, and point to an important site within the Greek Empire, where it was discovered that at least some aspects of the ancient myths are based in real history. Hazarlik, Turkey, 1870. German businessman and amateur archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann begins excavations in this small village, which was an important site within the Greek Empire more than 2,000 years ago. For years, he has been obsessed with finding the legendary city of Troy that is at the center of the Trojan War described in Homer's epic, the Iliad.
The story of the Trojan War is one of the most important stories of the Greek mythological cycle. Our main source is Homer, but it relies upon much earlier oral compositions that probably were going around in Greek culture for hundreds of years.
According to the legend, the Trojan War began when Helen, wife to King Menelaus of the Greek city-state of Sparta, fell in love with Trojan prince Paris and secretly ran off with him to Troy. Her actions sparked a bloody 10-year war between the Trojans and the Greeks.
The Greeks were able to defeat the Trojans by sneaking this wooden horse, which was full of Greek soldiers, into the city of Troy, where they were able to wreak havoc and ultimately, win the war. One of the aspects of the stories of the Trojan War that is quite interesting is that the gods take sides. Some are more on the side of the Trojans, some are more on the side of the Greeks.
At the time of Heinrich Schliemann's 1870 excavation, mainstream scholars had long maintained that the ancient Greek story was a work of fiction and that Troy never existed.
Heinrich Schliemann was this extraordinary character who, I guess he must have been quite rebellious as a child because he wouldn't accept the given facts. When Heinrich Schliemann was growing up, all of Greek mythology was mythology, and Heinrich Schliemann refused to believe it. In modern times, most scholars thought that Homer and his writing about the Trojan War was just a good story. Academic scholars just did not take Troy seriously. However, Heinrich Schliemann took Homer seriously.
Details from the Iliad had convinced Schliemann that the remnants of Troy would be found in the Turkish village of Hazarlik, beneath a 65-foot-tall earthen mound. In May 1873, Schliemann uncovered a hoard of gold, valuable artifacts, and jewelry that matched up with the riches mentioned in the Iliad, and declared that the search was over. He had theory that we've misinterpreted as just fantasy. The ancient Greek gods were physical beings that actually mingled amongst man in the ancient mythologies. The ancient astronaut theory proposes that these encounters actually happened in real life. They were here, not spiritual beings, they were here with their body. You can touch them. They were talking, they were building, they were doing something. They were not spiritual beings. Is it possible, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, that Greek mythology is based on actual events and encounters with otherworldly beings? Perhaps further clues can be found by examining just how the Greek gods were described.
The gods in the Greek mythology are all very, very human in their attributes. The Greek gods are jealous, they're angry, they're passionate, they hate each other, they love each other.
They kill, they attack each other, they attack humans especially. They have children out of wedlock. They wage wars with each other. They trick each other.
There's nothing entirely divine about them other than they have specific powers.
In the Greek myths, the powers of the gods often come in the forms of magical devices, weapons, and flying machines. Each one of the gods had a special super weapon. For example, Zeus had the thunderbolt. The thunderbolt was like a missile. He could throw it and make complete destruction everywhere. Poseidon, who lived under the sea, had the famous trident. He could steer the sea and create tempests, create tsunamis. Apollo had this super bow that could shoot super arrows. But they didn't have a miss. They have airships, they have superpowers and weapons. It would seem that the gods are using technology. In my opinion, it was the technology of an extraterrestrial. And it is not just a fiction. It's not just fantasy. It's not just an imagination. It is a true story. The old Greek gods were extraterrestrials. Could it be that the Greek gods were alien beings who came to Earth thousands of years ago? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest the stories about them reveal even more profound truths about the origins of the human race. The Greek island of Crete, 1900. A team of British archaeologists, led by Sir Arthur Evans, begins excavating the ruins of an ancient palace. In their efforts to unearth the sprawling complex, they come across a structure eerily matching one of the most fearsome places in all of Greek mythology, the Labyrinth of King Minos. According to the legend, the elaborate maze of the Labyrinth was constructed by order of King Minos to entrap a monstrous creature known as the Minotaur.
This legend of the Minotaur is one of the most important and prevalent legends of the ancient Greek mythology. One day, King Minos of Crete angers the god Poseidon. Poseidon, being angry at Minos, casts a spell over his wife, Pasiphae, that she might fall in love with this great white bull. And through the mating of the bull, the Minotaur is born. The Minotaur is half human and half bull as a result, and he is ferocious, and he feeds on the flesh of humans.
The legend of King Minos and the Labyrinth is something that was seen to be a fable until explorations of the palace in Crete. What Arthur Evans uncovered was an entire palace that seemed to be dedicated over to a bull cult. There were frescoes showing people leaping over bulls. There were bulls' horns, bulls' heads everywhere.
The palace is an elaborate structure with moving walls and mazes actually built into the palace. it became very clear upon looking at the structure of this palace that this was the original labyrinth.
If the structure found in Crete really is the fabled labyrinth of King Minos, then is it possible that the story of the Minotaur is based on actual events? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, but suggest that what is described in the legend is not literally a bull mating with a human. The story of the Minotaur is an astounding story of the creation of a hybrid being. And what's interesting about this is that Daedalus, this genius engineer, crafts this cow-shaped container that Minos' wife is to enter into this container and mate with this sacred bull. This sounds like some kind of genetics lab that's being created here for the specific purpose to make a human with a sacred bull. The Minotaur is the result of that mating. So when we peel back the layers of this story, we can easily interpret this as an example of ancient gene splicing.
There are plenty of myths that talk about these hybrids in the tales of Greece. There was a centaur, half horse, half man. If we look at the mermaid, a woman and part fish. With genetics, with experimentation, maybe these beings really did walk the earth, and our ancestors were depicting what they saw around them.
In the Greek mythological tradition, there are many instances of the gods creating hybrid animals, and even more that involve their manipulation of humans, including the creation of the human race. According to Greek mythology, the Titan Prometheus formed figurines of humans out of mud, and the Olympian Athena breathed life into them.
It's also said that Prometheus brought us civilization, that he gave us writing, he gave us language, he gave us arithmetic.
The Greek myths go on to speak of mortals and immortals commingling to create hybrids who are half human and half god. Many Greek heroes had been fathered by God. For example, Hercules, for example, Perseus, Captain, and many others. Semi-godly, semi-human hybrids.
These sexual interactions would produce what they call the demigod, somebody who is half man, half god, or half woman, half god. And these demigods became very, very powerful in their own ways.
We read a lot of stories about mating between gods and human beings in many, many other mythologies all around the world. We can find that in Mesopotamia, with the famous Anunnaki, and the stories about the Watchers. Much like the myths of ancient Greece, stories of humans mixed with the bloodlines of gods appear in many cultures throughout the ancient world. From the deities known as the Anunnaki, depicted in early Sumerian writings, to the biblical book of Enoch, which tells of fallen angels called the Watchers who mated with humans to create the Nephilim.
We are told that the sons of God came down to earth and mated with earthmen. Now this is in all mythology, whether it's Greek, whether it's Sumerian, whether it's Hindu, and so we have to ask ourselves, these are new human beings that are being created. How is this happening?
According to ancient astronaut theorists, the parallels in these accounts may be evidence of extraterrestrials intentionally mingling their DNA with mankind. The Greek gods can be placed in the same category as the Anunnaki, the guardians of the sky, and the so-called Watchers. They're all the same, meaning extraterrestrials observed humankind and also guided our development. We have the curious stories of the Greek gods creating these heroes or demigods, and so we can kind of see here how the gods or the extraterrestrials are genetically manipulating humans. Could the Greek stories said to have been built by a race of giants. The ancient Greek story of King Minos first appears in Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, and takes place around 2500 BC, roughly 1300 years before the rise of the Greek Empire. According to Greek mythology, this is the Golden Age, the time when humans shared the earth with the gods, as well as many other strange creatures like the Minotaur.
You're talking about tons of giants, tons of monsters, tons of scary beings, cyclopes, hybrids of monsters, but they're all existing together somehow in the same place.
In the ancient texts, Greece was home to an advanced society during the so-called Golden Age. And ancient astronaut theorists suggest remnants of that civilization may be located near the city of Argos, where there are ruins of a mysterious megalithic structure that is unlike any other structure in Greece.
Outside of Argos, there's a really beautifully built pyramidal building at Hellinikon, which is a total mystery, really, really very, very mysterious. The architecture looks archaic, and it's unique in that sense. It's a place where you can actually go into the pyramid.
The Pyramid of Hellinikon is quite small. It's maybe only 23 feet by 30 feet by maybe 12 feet tall. It's incredibly interesting. We don't really know what its purpose was, and even more controversial is the dating of it.
In 1995, scientists working at the Academy of Athens dated samples from the site using a new and experimental method called optical thermoluminescence. The results were staggering. The pyramid at Hellinikon, according to their results, is one of the oldest pyramids on Earth. The pyramid of Hellinikon dates to 2720 BC.
The Hellenical pyramid is thought to be originally built by the Mycenaeans, but if the dating is correct at 2720 BC, then this is over 1,000 years older. So we have to question who really built this.
The dating of the pyramid of Hellinikon places it in the same era as the so-called Golden Age, when gods and strange creatures were said to exist on Earth. Curiously, just 8 miles to the north is another structure that does not match the construction style of the Greek Empire, but features masonry strikingly similar to that of the pyramid of Hellinikon. Standing within the ancient site of Mycenae is an incredible megalithic structure called the Treasury of Atreus.
The Treasury of Atreus at Mycenae was this massive structure built into the hillside with huge blocks, conglomerate stone being brought into place, including the lintel that goes over the threshold going into the tomb, which weighs 250 tons.
What's telling about Mycenae is that we have multiple construction styles there, and the oldest one is the most sophisticated, and the same masonry style exists at the Pyramid of Hellinikon, about a 10-minute drive from present-day Mycenae. So clearly the two were part of the same kingdom at the time. For ancient astronaut theorists, the notion that these megalithic structures could both date back more than 4,700 years is extraordinary. But even more intriguing is the fact that the Greek stories say they were built by a race of giant humanoid beings who lived during the Golden Age.
According to the ancient Greeks, the Treasury of Atreus at Mycenae was created by the Cyclopses. Huge, giant builders that had a single circular eye in the middle of the forehead, and they were credited with lifting these huge blocks into place.
In Greek mythology, the Cyclops were related to the Titans, the first generation of gods and were master craftsmen. They created Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' cap of invisibility. And they were credited with building the ancient megaliths of Greece.
The Cyclops were thought to be master masons, advanced metallurgists, and also were able to quarry stone in a profoundly brilliant way. If you look around the site of Mycenae, you see amazing construction all over the site. So is there some reality to these stories? Is there actual giants who were involved in the construction of sites like Mycenae?
As far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, the Pyramid of Ellinikon and the Treasury of Atreus provide further evidence that the Golden Age of the gods was more than just a myth.
This idea is not something that was just pulled out of thin air. In fact, it also connects to other stories of gods around the world. Many of the ancient Egyptian texts that have been translated speak of a so-called golden age of ancient Egypt at a time when human beings mingled side by side with the so-called gods. Now, this is something that has been recorded orally and also in the written language for thousands of years around the world. Our ancestors all talking about the same visiting extraterrestrials. Is it possible that the structures like the Treasury of Atreus and the Pyramid of Ellinikon were built during a time when humans shared the earth with visitors from another world? Perhaps further clues can be found by examining another mysterious megalithic site where the Greeks claimed they could speak directly to the gods. The Temple of Apollo, Delphi, Greece. Located on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, this site was a religious center throughout the entire timeline of the Greek Empire. When Homer wrote the Iliad in the 8th century BC, when Socrates established Western philosophy in the 5th century BC, and when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in the 4th century BC, Delphi was the place where people went to communicate directly with the gods.
Delphi is this extraordinary, powerful place, and you can feel it when you go there today. Delphi became hugely important throughout classical antiquity. Everybody, especially the ruling elite, would go and they would pose a question. Nobody would go to war, nobody would even start a trade excursion. Nobody would do anything without going and consulting the oracle. And the oracle would channel basically an answer then from the gods.
The oracle was a high priestess known as the Pythia, who held court at the Temple of Apollo, which lies mostly in ruins today. According to ancient texts, those seeking counsel from the gods were put in a meditative state before entering the innermost sanctuary of the temple, where they would offer gifts and present their questions to the oracle.
The way the oracle of Delphi functioned was the Pythia, the priestess, sat over a crevice which was within the Temple of Apollo, and she would inhale whatever fumes were coming up from the crevice, and she would then get an answer from Apollo, a divine answer from above.
There was a crack in the stone there, and there was a kind of vapor of gas that was coming, which put her into an altered state. Although we do not know what the altered state was like, maybe she was tapping into something.
Current research on the Pythia at Delphi is asking the question, was there perhaps some kind of psychedelic connection there?
According to ancient astronaut theorists, the notion that chemically altering the mind might facilitate a connection with otherworldly beings is supported by experiments with a powerful hallucinogen called dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. Between 1990 and 1995, scientists at the University ago, administered DMT to 60 volunteers and were surprised to find that many of them had very similar visions, including encounters with strange beings who reportedly said, "Now we can communicate with you."
Recent research suggests that hallucinogenic experiences usually open portals of communication with other worldly beings. And perhaps this is what was going on back at Delphi as well.
In the Greek mythological tradition, Zeus not only chose the exact location where the Pythia would receive messages from the gods, he also placed a mysterious object at the oracle called the Omphalos. Just what the Omphalos was remains a mystery, since it reportedly disappeared in 395 AD. But a Roman replica of the stone has been preserved at the Museum of Delphi, supporting the notion that it truly existed.
It's a fascinating stone. It's very beautiful. And it appears to be covered in a type of crisscross pattern. It's possible that the Omphalos stone was some type of communication device between the people on the ground and the people in the sky.
The ancient Greeks built their famous temple at Delphi around this Omphalos stone, and it was the power center of the world. And this Omphalos stone was also supposed to be a vehicle for communicating with the gods. So you have to wonder, was it really some special stone that could help people communicate with extraterrestrials?
Is it possible that the ancient Greeks were given specific instructions on where to build the Temple of Apollo by an otherworldly visitor? One who utilized both the vapors from the Earth and some mysterious technological device to facilitate a means of communication. Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest that Delphi's otherworldly connection was established long before the rise of the Greek Empire. During the so-called Golden Age, when the gods were said to be present on Earth. As evidence, they point to mysterious ruins that feature the same type of Cyclopean masonry found at Mycenae and the Pyramid of Hellinikon.
Officially, Delphi is dated to about 6th century BC, but there are earlier constructions at the site. And these are the gigantic Cyclopean and polygonal walls that are not just in the main part of the site. If you actually look around carefully, you find them half buried down near the entrance at the lowest levels. And it really does suggest that the site could be much, much older. And this was used for not hundreds, possibly thousands of years.
According to the ancient Greeks, figures like Zeus, Athena, and Apollo continued to guide them well beyond the Golden Age. And ancient astronaut theorists suggest these otherworldly beings inspired an extraordinary moment in history that would shape the world for centuries to come. Starting with the harnessing of fire hundreds of thousands of years ago, there have been moments in human history of sudden and significant advancement, like the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and the founding of the United States. But some scholars believe the most significant period of all occurred in Athens around 2,500 years ago. In the span of a single lifetime, dozens of history's most brilliant minds emerged and achieved monumental advancements that would reverberate through the ages. It was a time known as the Greek Miracle.
It goes almost without saying that without ancient Greece and without the so-called Greek miracle, civilization today would not be the same. Some of the most profound philosophers lived at this time. Plato, for instance, he created these remarkable 3D geometries, the dodecahedron. Pythagoras related the harmony of the cosmos and all within it to mathematical formulas and geometry.
and different philosophers came up with different ideas, looking at this much more kind of practical way of understanding life and the cosmos. You had Socrates, Hippocrates, Aristotle, Sophocles, Euripides, Herodotus, and the list goes on. They all lived at the same time. So my question is it possible that they had a direct connection with the physical extraterrestrials that were monitoring Earth at that time? And my answer to that is a resounding yes. Whether the Greek miracle happened by chance or by extraterrestrial design, one thing is certain. The accomplishments of the ancient Greeks helped to shape the world for centuries to come.
We see and we experience the gifts of the ancient Greeks every day in our modern lives in the 21st century. They gave us everything from democracy to the most extraordinary architecture and art. We see it in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., the extraordinary Greek temple architecture.
You go to Paris, you go to London, all the architecture comes from ancient Greece. And then you learned about the mathematics that made these monuments possible. All of that coming from ancient Greece.
Anybody who does science will be still using terms that were coined in archaic and classical Greece. We're still using ancient Greek words and concepts. So the Western world is very, very much indebted to ancient Greece.
It is true that almost everything of the Western world that we have today has its birthplace in ancient Greece, then perhaps it would mean that modern civilization itself can be traced back to these extraterrestrials, these gods of Olympus.
Could it be that the incredible mythological tales of ancient Greece tell the story of humankind's true origins, and that the world we live in today is the product of extraterrestrial visitation that took place thousands of years ago? Perhaps we will receive the answer when visitors descend from the sky once again, and we come face to face with our alien ancestors.